This is Jeff Durkin with WeAreChangeCT Connecticut. We're out here in New York City, and we just caught up with Amber Lyon, three-time Emmy Award-winning journalist and author of the new book, Peace, Love, and Pepper Spray. Amber, thanks for coming out. And first of all, tell us about your interesting story about you used to work for CNN, and kind of go from there, how you kind of led to CNN and then independent journalism.
Okay, well, I worked for the mainstream for 2 years. I was an investigative correspondent and also producer with CNN's documentary unit. And I was able to travel around the world and cover some amazing stories, one of those being the uprising in Bahrain. But unfortunately, when we had returned to the United States after much struggle to get this story told, our documentary never aired on CNN International, and we later discovered that Bahrain, the regime, was paying CNN International and had been for years to produce positive content about the regime. So they were like infomercials for dictators. And that was quite upsetting for myself and for my crew. And then CNN eventually dissolved our investigative and documentary unit. So I became an independent journalist. After that experience, I decided I never wanted to go back to the mainstream. It was there was a lot of censorship going on across the board. It's just very difficult for these corporations to also do honest journalism. Oftentimes, the journalism becomes propaganda. I always say journalism is printing what someone else doesn't want printed. Everything else is public relations. Well, we're seeing too much of a mix between public relations and journalism right now in the mainstream. So I am an independent journalist right now, and I've been traveling the country covering protests photographically for this coffee table photo book, Peace, Love, and Pepper Spray, which for me is a great way to just take all of these amazing images and inspiring images of protest and put it into one location where 20 years from now people can go back and read this book and really remember what was happening on the streets of the United States, because we are seeing protests around the country at historic levels.
So kind of go from that, the response you got from other people around you when you decided to leave CNN and kind of, you mentioned the propaganda, and start your own way. What was the response from people in different circles?
Yeah, well, journalistically, the response was I had a lot of journalists in the mainstream supporting my decision because they had noticed censorship as well, but they hadn't come out. I was one of the only journalists to come out and publicly talk about it, because I think that this is the elephant in the room when it comes to journalism right now, is the behavior of these media companies. They're misleading the public, and I think more journalists need to speak up about it. So I had a positive response amongst my colleagues, and then in the public, I think what I was saying was just justifying what people have known for decades, that they've been being fed propaganda that's leading us into wars and into a false sense of importance in life, and so the response has only been very positive, because I think I'm just saying something that people already knew was going on, but it just helps them feel, I guess, less crazy and like, okay, it is, my thoughts are justified. This is really going on, this censorship, and there is a coordinated effort to mislead the public with the use of these big networks and media companies.
And speaking of different topics, about basically like criminalizing journalism now with the Obama administration, starting with the Bush administration, continuing to Obama, the NDA, the war on whistleblowers, and different stuff like that. Do you think that's more of a chilling effect for journalists, for future journalists like yourself or many others who are maybe watching? What do you say, your thoughts on the latest, journalism issues like that?
Yeah, the Obama administration, I don't want to just say Obama, because there's a lot of people working behind him that are working in a coordinated effort to criminalize journalism in the United States, and they've been going after journalists and whistleblowers at an unprecedented level. And for me, that has not had a chilling effect. In fact, it's made me given me more of a desire to continue as investigative journalist, and also to galvanize other reporters to fight back, and we're seeing that happening now. So it's been inspiring to see so many journalists say that this is unacceptable, and we need a free press to have a healthy democracy in the United States, and to see all of these forces just join up and really fight back. That being said, you have Obama going after New York Times reporter James Risen. A colleague of mine, Barrett Brown, is currently locked in a cage facing a potential 100 years in prison for what I believe is an effort to silence him. And we're also seeing the administration go after whistleblowers, and including Edward Snowden. I mean, his fate is just up in the air right now. So what's inspiring is the amount of people who have said that this is unacceptable and are working now diligently to create change and fight back.
I think I've noticed lately, and I'm sure you've noticed, is the trend towards independent journalism. People more getting tired of the mainstream corporate-fed media and turning into more citizen-based journalists. So many other great people are doing work, and others who are watching, and it really shows just how people are gravitating towards that, who want, are more hungry for this type of information. Are you seeing that lately now?
Of course, and when I speak to journalism students, I tell them how jealous I am of these students getting out into the field right now, because when I first entered journalism, you were nearly forced to work for one of these corporations if you wanted to make an income, and they were the gatekeepers, not only for information, but also for journalists. And now, as an independent journalist, you can just create a website with a We Pay button and upload your own videos and travel the world on your own schedule, doing honest, objective journalism without having any of these dinosaur media companies telling you what's a story and what's not. And that's so inspiring for me and for the future of journalism.
Just talk about your latest book, Peace, Love, and Pepper Spray. It just came out. Definitely recommend it for anybody. I just bought one myself, actually, to check it out. So tell us about that book and the project to get that rolling and how long that took and different stuff like that to get all the photographs and all the different stuff together.
It was difficult because I had to convince a publisher to publish a protest book at a time where protesters and the Occupy movement was being demonized. And fortunately, I found an amazing man who really believed in my work and agreed to agreed to use his publishing company that normally publishes non-political books to put this book out there. And it took about a year to get all the photographs. I also was able to fortunately highlight other photojournalists' work who I really believe in: James Fassinger, Glenn Hallog, Mark Onat, Jenna Pope, and really just combine some of the best photos and most inspiring photos and also most disturbing photos of police militarization into this one book that can be delivered now to the mainstream, hopefully for around less than $20. So hopefully it's affordable for the average Joe. And my hope with this book is that 20 years from now, when we're being fed a different version of the events on the streets of America in the history books, which we know has usually happened, people can go back and look at this book and see the truth about what was happening on the streets. And another thing this book does is expose the disturbing rate of police militarization happening around the country. I went to some protests where police would show up dressed like they were heading to Afghanistan with combat boots on and camouflage clothing to police a protest that consisted mostly of unarmed women and even children. And we have to ask ourselves, why is our police force dressing as if we're in martial law? Why is there this coordinated effort to crush dissent and intimidate dissent in the country? And that's a question, after reading the book, that many people will have on their minds.
Just one last thing to wrap it up. What's your advice for future people who may want to get involved in journalism? Because even like with your story, it's like it seems like good intentions, but people may not understand the idea that the CNNs and the NBCs of the world don't have the best intentions of truth in mind. Just maybe your advice on how, like, how you got through with your story.
Yeah, I mean, it was so upsetting for me because I really loved working for CNN and being able to have that platform and was able to do some amazing stories. But at the end of the day, a lot of these companies, as you can just tell from the coverage, are not adequately or accurately covering the events. They've kind of moved from a role as a watchdog as a journalist to roles of being lapdogs. And it's difficult working for these mainstream outlets to do accurate reporting because at the end of the day, these are corporations and they're looking to appease corporate interests. So my advice to anyone who's trying to enter this field is really to do exactly what you're doing, Jeff, and enter it independently, and then really build a name for yourself. And then you'll be able to kind of use each outlet to your advantage, and people will pick up your work instead of you just being kind of held as a slave to one outlet. You have your journalistic freedom. And my another advice I would say is to just hang in there, because journalism is changing, but it's changing for the better, and it's a revolutionary time for journalists, because you can just pick up a smartphone or a small camera and head out and change the world, and it's an exciting and inspiring time. So hang in there. I wish I was just getting out of journalism school right now and didn't have to go through all the censorship, and I wish I could have just right away started a website and really been able to connect with the community. So hang in there and keep with it. Journalism's a beautiful profession.
Alternative media. So one of the things that we want to do as we build out this platform is we're launching this show to begin with, but ultimately what we want to do is create an online news network that is similar to what you would see on cable right now, that we've got 24/7 streaming news, but also merging that with alternative media.
Because without grassroots media, without citizen journalism, we will not be able to take back the media. We have to make the corporate media irrelevant and take things in our own hands, and I applaud your guys' efforts, and I applaud everyone who's doing similar things, because this is really the revolution right here.